Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CPA MOMS Podcast. I'm Nicole, your host, and the brand ambassador of CPA MOMS, where we believe that real success is only meaningful if it holds up in every area of life, what we call the 4 Fs: financial, fitness, family, and firm or career. If one area is lacking, then the rest lose their meaning. You can have a thriving career, but if your health is falling apart, it doesn't feel like success. And you can have all the money in the world, but if your family life is strained, you can't really enjoy it the way you want to. And I know as working moms, we carry so much. We have career goals and family schedules and the mental load, the emotional load. And on top of it all, there's the quiet question that so many of us wrestle with. I know I do. Am I doing enough for my kids? Am I spending enough time with them? Am I saying the right things? Am I having those conversations that really matter? And when you're juggling work and motherhood, you don't always get those endless hours of slow, intentional teaching moments. But what you can have, what truly matters, are deeply impactful conversations. But how do you know what conversations to have, right? That's why I am so excited about today's episode. I am joined by Hannah Mobley, the children's minister at Nelson Christian Church. Hannah brings a wealth of experience, from her background in social work and child services to her heart for helping families build strong spiritual foundations. She has spent years guiding parents, supporting kids, and helping families develop the tools that they need to navigate boundaries, emotions, faith, and identity. And today we are diving into those conversations that matter most. How to talk to your kids about boundaries, their bodies, safety, and how to help them grow a faith that is truly their own. This is going to be such a heart-centered episode, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Hannah, thank you so much for being with me.
Absolutely. I always love talking to you. So it's just more fun that we get to share that with other people.
Well, yeah, and I did not mention that Hannah is also my best friend in the whole world. So
Yeah,
there's that too. So
yeah.
we might have a little bit of fun today. So why do you think that so many moms, especially working moms, struggle with feeling like they aren't doing enough?
Love. Um, the old saying that if you aren't concerned about whether or not you're doing enough, you just don't care. We love our children and we want our children to be blessed and we want them to have the opportunities that either we had or didn't have. And we cannot, I think I was talking about that with you earlier, we cannot meet every need for them. It is physically, emotionally, spiritually impossible for us to meet every need. And our definition of successful or happy is going to be different than comfortable. And especially in the US, our understanding of happiness is, and for me, really so, is directly linked with comfortable. Like, I am happiest when I'm in my pajamas. The sweatshirt you got me that said, if I'm reading books in pajamas, I'm in. I was wearing that this morning. I had to really talk myself out of not wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt today. Because to me, I'm happier when I'm comfortable. And we have to be uncomfortable with our kids, whether they're having a situation that they're already feeling uncomfortable, or whether we have to discipline them because they don't realize they're doing something that could hurt them or injure them or cause long-term consequences, and we have to bring or provide that uncomfortable for them. That doesn't fit in our mind with helping them.
That's such a great point. Yeah, because it is wildly uncomfortable sometimes when you have to discipline your kids or when they are struggling going through something and you just want to go in and fix it for them, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
I
what
think
we are for each other, is we pep talk each other through
Yes.
the I have to do this, but I don't want to do this.
Yes. Yeah, and I think in that too, one of the most important things is that we make sure that our child, even in the struggle and even in the discipline, can still see, as you said, the love and still be emotionally seen, if you will. And that
Mhm.
can be hard to do when we don't get as much time with them as working moms. What are some signs that a child feels emotionally seen?
I think it's how often and how aggressively they interrupt you or then behave when they're around you. So if it's um, it's like in your case, they are physically with you during the day, but there are times when your attention is on something else. So I'm guessing you can tell when they're feeling needier because they are louder. They're going to do the things, they're going to quote unquote misbehave in ways that get your attention. And I think that's one of the easier things in the basic psychology 101 stuff that's like, an acting out child is a child that wants attention. And so for my kids, they go to school during the day and I get them in the evening. But like my daughter was talking actually last night. So I make sure at nighttime I tuck them in and I mean, sometimes it's only a few minutes, but I try to, based on how talkative they are, spend 10 to 15 minutes with them, just getting a recap of their day. Because sometimes we're just so busy during the day, I haven't gotten a full recap. And like yesterday, she was crying because I'm getting ready to go on another couple day trip. And she was like, I was just telling my friends how I miss you when you're gone. And so then I had to schedule, um, I physically in my calendar scheduled some time with us. Um, but I am thankful that she did it at that time during the designated time that we have to be together. And it wasn't that she was screaming or acting out. I mean, she's 10, so she's not going to just roll on the floor and have a tantrum anyway. But she didn't feel the need to bring that. So I still feel bad because my child misses me and then I had to talk to my husband and reevaluate like how often am I away? Is this okay or is this just a natural thing she's feeling? Um, but she did it during the time when I already am there for her. So I was able to kind of be like, oh, yeah, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of hit on a point that, again, as working moms, we struggle with that. How often do I have to be there, if you will, to really make sure that I'm connecting with them in a way that has the most impact? And, it's that whole like quantity versus quality conversation, right? So, from your experience, what actually creates the most impact in a child's life?
Um, I think both of us, one of the reasons why I think our parenting gels so well is I remember when they were really young and we were having a conversation. So just quick background for those that don't know, Nicole and I moved to Kentucky about the same time, and Nicole had some family here. I had none. And so I just went over on a random play date and I was like, either I die or she's my best friend. So she's my best friend. But one of the first conversations I remember us having is the time in versus time out strategies. Um, and there's a lot of now, even with TikTok, I mean, I don't think TikTok was even a thing when we were first friends, but with all those short videos of like, this is magic potion for what you do. But I do remember hearing something online about have your kid join you instead of sit them in timeout. And so I use timeout still. It's not a one size fits all thing, but I think both of us have taken the approach of let them work things out with you. And I think with the rise in homeschool, and I know like you personally, but then also just in general, I think one of the things that we have to remember in okay, I have ADHD, so this is gonna so yesterday I was talking about mentors and mentorship in my Sunday school class. And I was talking to these kids about who's a mentor versus a mentee. And we were talking about Paul and how he called Timothy his son, even though it was just his mentor. And they were like, oh, kind of like our parents. Like my mom is my sister's mentor because my sister has to watch me when my mom's away. And I was like, yes. And that's what homeschool used to be, was it was some of the STEM stuff, the reading, writing, science, but a lot of it is life stuff. And
Mhm.
so if we time in with them, then even the small things end up having being quality. So, and then we don't have to get, I'm a Martha, church slang for I'm busy. So I have a harder time sitting and being. My husband is a lot better at that with them. So he will remind me to just sit and be, or sometimes my kids will ask for cuddle time, and that reminds me that they need me to just sit and be. Um, but I like to include them on grocery runs, and that ends up being a learning moment, even if I don't buy them the toy that they want. And I think as parents, we've both had that same approach, and that's made it easier, even if I have your kids or you have my kids, because they're kind of used to that system.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. And I know that there are a lot of times, like if I'm just running to the store, it's like, oh, well, I'll just go. And one, it'll be quiet time that I don't ever get. Let me leave the kids at home. But I have always just offered, and what Weston, my youngest, was like, yes. Like he just loved that that was time that he could be with me, that I'm getting something done, but it's still time that we're together. And so that, helped fill the cup, if you will. So then let's get into some deeper conversations. One thing that I think is very hard to know is, at what age do you start teaching your kids about safety and boundaries and body autonomy? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Um, okay. So cheesy, but newborn, right? Everything is connected. And maybe it's because we're women, we've got the what my husband calls spaghetti brain, where everything's just always connected. But that's everything's connected. When I'm in my church nursery right now, and sometimes it can feel difficult to feel like you're serving when you just hold infants. But I tell my workers, you are helping a family and an infant feel safe. And when you're in a community, that's the most basic, right? So you do the triangle of needs, um, Maslow's, I think, theory of needs. But it's you need to feel basic safety first. So when we spend time, even I mean they have the studies that show that if babies aren't held a certain amount of time as infants, then it can cause serious behavioral and relational issues later, attachment issues and stuff. So I mean, from infancy you're starting that groundwork of boundaries. At around 18 months is when kids start to say no, because they understand that they are a different body than somebody else, and they will start to take toys. I had my daughter, so my firstborn, was in daycare, and I remember the daycare person said, Nora is so mean. She has been taking toys. And I was like, great. Because that means she understands that and saying mine, that was a thing. She was taking the toy and saying mine. And I was like, that means she is on track developmentally. Like do you want to let her keep the toy? Maybe not. Like, I'm not saying my kid should get whatever toy she wants and just rule the roost, but it's okay. It's not mean for her. She's learning to understand. And that's where I think other moms are helpful too, because when we see that our kids are doing the same thing at the same time, it's easier for us not to take it personally, and it's easier for us to see it as part of their growth. As far as like actual stranger danger, I think we teach that at a young age too. The problem is when you go to extremes, but I
Mm.
think that something when we were younger moms that was starting to trend that I keep, and I know you do too, is allowing our children to choose who they are affectionate with and how affectionate they are. Um, if they can't trust their ick feeling, then that makes it hard for them. And even if you feel like somebody's safe, they need to learn how to discern that for themselves. So you want them to go from feeling unsafe to safe with a safe person because they're going to have to navigate that later. So just because you feel like somebody's safe, and that goes back to the taking offense. So instead of being defensive or letting grandma and grandpa be defensive, letting like encouraging them without making them, and then being able to hopefully have that conversation with the safe person too, so your parents, because if they can see that you're trying, but you want your like clearly you're a safe person, so like yeah, so we're gonna just sit here until she feels comfortable because she's going to feel comfortable eventually and trusting that them to do that process. And then um, I always, whether it's in a classroom or my kids, the no secrets thing, there's no secrets for mom and dad. And then really trying to make sure I handle things in a way that help them know they can come to me. We talk about the importance of discipline and discipline from conversation, the difference between those. Like, did you really get in trouble or was that just uncomfortable? Going back to that first question. Like, just because I made you feel uncomfortable because I pointed out that you could have made a better choice does not mean that you were in trouble. And you would much rather get in trouble in this way, if you think you're going to get in trouble, than add on to it and get in trouble later. Um, and even so then even discipline itself is the boundary setting and not letting them get away with everything. You should talk about the book that you were reading because that's been on my mind a lot lately, the resistance and authoritarian versus compassion and parenting.
Oh yeah. So first of all, one thing I wanted to say too, because I know this was something we were very much in alignment with, is always using the correct name for body parts from a
Yeah.
very, very young age, never doing like, I don't know, pet names. I don't know what to call them for body parts, just so they know and understand and will use the real name in a bad situation if they have to. You have that established. Um, and then, yes, I am reading a book right now called Raising Lions,
Hmm.
I believe is the name of it. And it has been very good, but it talks about how, back when we were kids, we were very much raised under a very authoritarian type of parenting. And then that created almost a disconnect from building confidence, and why our generation tends to struggle with confidence in things and ego, having that self-esteem issues. And then now we have shifted almost completely over to the other side where parents have almost gotten away from the authoritarian so much that they are teaching their kids compassion and teaching them self-esteem and how to be very confident and sure of themselves, but they have now missed that link of like, there are others that are equal and or superior to me, just in a social construct structure. They don't have that. He calls it, I think, hand meeting hand or fist meeting fist. And so they develop this idea that they are superior, that they are better than everybody around them and everything around them, and they do not have to submit to authority. And we see that a lot. people say all the time that this generation is, oh, I just lost the word, entitled. And so
Mhm.
that's where that is coming from, just not having that authoritarian to match them. And kids need that. I mean, it's talking about how that isn't very important to them and they want that and need that. And so when they don't get that, it just creates a dominance in them that they don't, they do because they don't know any other way, but they would actually prefer somebody to meet them head on and stop that development. So it is a very interesting book. So you talked about age appropriate wise a lot, but I think too, like, can you talk about then how to have those conversations? Because I know that's one thing that I have struggled with is how do you talk about their bodies in a way that is healthy and shame-free and empowering? Teach them it is their body, but then also submit to authority, and that does not mean that I cannot discipline you or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I think I was talking to my husband about the book and how you'd explained it to me. And I've been thinking the last couple days, like, where am I compassionate, where am I authoritarian, and is the balance okay? And I I think that, again, the thing that we both do that I enjoy is do both. So we will have consequences, but then explain the why.
Mhm.
And I do that with boundaries in their bodies as well. And it's easier when you get into that kind of system. And I think both of us also we explain almost one step above where they're at so that they can not a whole, leap, but just a little bit more complicated than you would think right now because one, I think kids tend to know more than we give them credit for. Same thing with kids with special needs or even adults with special needs. Like we tend to think they're down, and if we introduce something, even if they don't fully grasp it yet, they'll they'll know that that's connected. And so as they continue to grow, you're kind of helping give them a direction to grow in. So with understanding their bodies, you go from just teaching them their basic parts, finger, nose, ear, to when they get old enough to be able to speak, when they can form full sentences, you're able to say, um, who, uh, who, in what type of examples would you be naked in front of somebody else? Would you not have your clothes on in front of somebody else? Because I worked with Department of Child Services and I had to, you don't want to create trauma where there is none. So you don't want to lead them in the direction of trauma. And you also don't want to put words in kids' mouths because if they go, I've been in so many what's called forensic interviews where kids will use words and the family will say, "Oh, that's not a word we've used before." That could mean that the possible perpetrator is using that word, but then sometimes we found that the school counselor used that word. So
Mm.
then the prosecutor's a lot less likely to take that word seriously if that's not a word that they've typically used and it's not a word associated directly with the perp. That's also why I use the strict names. So you want to, and I talk things out with my husband sometimes beforehand or with you, so that I can get a handle on what I think I want to say before I say it. If it's something that's like that where I want to make sure I'm methodical. Um, but if they are able to form full sentences and they're to the point where you would expect them to scream if they're being taken, then you start talking about those things. If I was holding your hand and all of a sudden you look up and it's not me holding your hand, it's somebody else, what would you do? And talking them through those things The first time I was lost, I did what Barney told me to do because I'd watched a Barney episode on it. Um, and
It was good advice.
yeah, it got me there. I stayed where I was. A guy came and stood next to me, but he did not try to take me anywhere. It was out in public and but he said, "Can I stand with you until your parents come?" And I said yes. And then I whistled because he said to have a whistle and I didn't have a whistle, so I whistled. Whistled where it was. But those end up coming in handy. Like kids will think about that when they have those things. And so as they get older, I was like, okay, if somebody grabs you, I mean, to the point where I've gotten to like, don't go to the second location. Do everything you can do, scream, kick, like, don't be afraid of. I make sure my kids know because the big thing with grooming is that I'm going to hurt your family or I'm going to hurt you if you tell me. And so I have sat both of mine down. I mean, at the age of probably 4 or 5, I made sure both of them know mommy is not afraid. You need to tell me. I am not. And for me, they knew I worked keeping kids safe. And then the older they are, the more I explain how I kept them safe. But it was my job to make sure kids were safe. It is my job to make sure you are safe. I am not afraid. Um, at probably 6, I let them know that I've had people threaten my life before multiple times. And my kids are fairly mature for 6. But I was like, I am not afraid if somebody, because most of the time they're not going to be violent. Nobody was
Right.
actually physically violent to me. Um, and that I know what to do. So the more you tell them, in these situations, and give them the tools to be able to say, that's baloney. That's not true.
Great. Yes, that's very helpful. And so then to kind of expand this, take it a step farther, because I think, you know, as moms, we want to keep our kids safe. We want to do everything that we can. And it would obviously be very helpful if they would just do everything that we said when we said it and just here is the life I want for you. Just step in and do all of these things, right? Um, but now for like developing your faith, I know like this is an area that wouldn't it just be nice if I could take my truth and just give it to them and then know that for the rest of their life they're going to follow that and it will be great. Not that I did that because I totally rebelled and had my time period and we all need that, I guess. Um, but how do we teach our kids to have their own faith? Because I obviously, though it would be nice to do that, it's not as likely to stick if they just do what they're told, right? Like they get out in the world, they have to have developed that on their own.
Um, I think one thing I was I was blessed, lucky, to have grown up in a home where I have the same basic values and the same religion. But I still had to make it my own. And so even though it was the same, I'm able to see and relate to people who've even converted or are different than their family, um, because I really struggled to make it my own. Um, Not that I struggled by seeking outside necessarily, but I wanted to make sure I knew what I believed and why I believed it, because I did not want to have somebody ask and be like, because my mom told me so.
Mm.
And so that's my focus. So in my classroom, because I'm a children's minister, my job, and I've been accused of it a ton, actually less now that I'm actually a children's minister and more when I was just a Christian mom, or even in college and part of a church. I was around a lot of people that were like, "Oh, you're just indoctrinating the little kids."
Mm.
Um, so I'm pretty passionate about kids, equipping kids to make their own decisions and equipping kids to study on their own and not be afraid of questions. Again, a thing that we both really take that into parenting and everything. With their bodies, with boundaries, with relationships, with faith, they need to be able to ask questions. Um, it is not, it is my responsibility to provide them with opportunities and information and tools. It is not our responsibility to make decisions for them. And I have some teenage stepkids, and I worked a lot with teenagers at DCS and with the mental health field. And the what I heard early on that is true is the reason that teenhood is so hard is because the parents are still trying to hold the gates, the guardrails.
Yeah.
And the teenagers are getting, it's bigger, it's a wider road, maybe a 4-lane highway now. So they get to move more within that, but the parents are still trying to figure out where do we need to have the guardrails. And the teenagers are trying to figure out when do I get to take the training wheels off and when do I get to just be free. And that's never going to feel comfortable. That's always going to have at least moments of crash and then you're going to skid. So when if we have that kind of concept even early on, and we know we are raising, when I'm teaching my kids in my classroom, I'm teaching them to be the old folks that are sitting, that are the elders, that are the church secretaries, that are the children's ministers. Like I'm teaching them in a way that I'm like, how am I preparing them to be able to do this on their own later? And I know that they're going to mess up when they get there. And my kids, I'm teaching them to be able to live without me, even though I don't want them to want to live without me. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
don't, like I was just telling both of our kids today, like if you'd quit growing, if you'd quit growing up, then your clothes would fit you better. But clearly you're getting too tall and so your shirt doesn't fit. And of course they know that we're joking because we want them to grow tall, but we are preparing them. Our job is to not have a job anymore and to
Yes.
move to the point that we're not doing that anymore. And so the more we can look at it like that, then at least a little more prepared. And then again, friends, so that when we don't feel like we're prepared, we can go and cry and be like, why are they growing up on us? That's not fair.
Yes. And we do that.
Yeah.
So there's, I'm curious your take on this one because I can say, I did not feel like this was supported when I was a kid. And so obviously, well, I think most people, but I know I tend to things that I didn't, I wasn't exposed to, or I didn't feel like was taught well when I was a kid. I'm worried then that I'll repeat those things for my kids. So, how can we help kids wrestle with, those big questions, doubts, without shutting them down?
I have a couple of resources that I'll use that sometimes I'll introduce those questions so that I'm feeling prepared.
Mm.
So I have a book that's like questions to talk through with your teen. Um, with my daughter who's 10, we went to, oh man, I feel so unprepared for actually like I got to skip some of this. Plus, they're boys, my stepsons. So, like, some of the stuff I was just like, tag, you're it. I don't have to deal with that. Because I'm not their mom and I'm a girl. But Nora is mine and she's a girl. So we went to the doctor and the doctor asked her over a year ago, so have you started your period? And she looked at me and was, what's that? And so I was like, okay, we're doing this. We're going to do this today. So we got home and my mom had just given me, because, that's what moms do still as adults, is prepare us, even though we're not prepared. So she had given me a couple of body books. I think one was by American Girl Doll. I don't know what publisher the other one was, but they were a couple of informational body books. And so they just talk about like what to expect. And of course they have those for all the stages of life, but that one in particular, the puberty one. So I let her flip through the book. She loved it. She like every night because she was so excited about getting older and she was looking forward to for all her whole nine. She's been 10 for 2 years because the whole year of 9 she was like, I'm almost 10. So she flipped through it because she was very excited and I'm terrified. um, One thing, like she loves chokers and like the necklaces that stay, and I hate them. They remind me of, and maybe it's because I had some goth stuff when I grew up, which I definitely had a goth like phase, but um, I, to me, it reminds me of the dog collar and oppression, and so I associate it with oppression. I don't like it. Um, so for a little while, I did not let her wear it, at least out of the house. I had one that was looser that didn't even fit right that she wore from when I was a kid. And then I talked to my husband. I usually will talk to you or one of my other friends too that our values align. And I will ask, like, is this a me thing? Is this a my preference? Am I forcing something on her that is not reasonable? Or am I appropriately protecting her? And that one, my husband's pretty conservative, like I am too, with like makeup and things and dress. So when he was like, Hannah, I think that's a you thing, I was like, okay. I believe that because he's not going to be like, yes, wear a miniskirt, you know? So I was like, okay. So I let her wear a choker and she's got another one for her birthday. And I let her wear that because that association is a me thing and not a her thing. But I like those resources. And both of us have, I know with our kids, we apologize. And
More than I would like to admit. Yes.
we're perfect, but we do it anyway, just to show them, just as an example. We come up with things. We apologize, and then we see the value in seeing growth in each other, in ourselves, and we're not afraid to show that to them. So then they're not afraid to tell us when they're working on something. Um, because then and going back to even the first question, I know I can't be everything they need, and so I will try and answer it as best I can. For me specifically, because I'm a Christ follower, I pray like crazy, and sometimes I'll come out of those conversations going, okay, the Holy Spirit answered that better than I could have, because I didn't know, I wasn't prepared for that. Like we've talked about everything from life or death, heaven, why is there pain in the world, to like, did Jesus poop? Will we poop in heaven? Like these random things. And some of them are very like, this is impactful. And then some of them, it's just treating that conversation, laughing, but then actually answering that question or being like, well, I don't know. Where is that in scripture? I don't know. We're going to find that though. We're going to look for that. So even when you and I don't have the answers for our kids, being willing to go with them there and then allowing them to come up with their own conclusion, because those bless us. And that's the times when we come to each other and we're like, listen to what my kid said about, or sometimes it's with each other. Like sometimes it'll be um uh, like um like Weston and Jackson will have a conversation and they'll be like, yeah, we really need to make sure we're being kind to Camden because he's having a tough time, or Nora was crazy, but we love her anyway. And those things, I mean, they sound small, but in their own way, they're showing compassion. They're being bold in what they believe, but they're learning how to, and sometimes they'll correct each other. And Nora will try and defend something. And I try to point out the things that they do really well individually, um, so that they feel safe enough to be like, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thanks.
So I think we have touched on some areas that we can have very impactful conversations. And I know like we could probably sit here and talk all
We can
night,
talk all
right?
day.
We do that sometimes. So. But are there any just really impactful conversations that you feel like we would be remiss if we did not touch on at all before we ended this episode?
Yeah, I think, cliche, but and we've touched on a little bit, but, let's talk about sex.
Mm,
My family did not talk about it.
yes,
You just ignored the fact that it exists. I think, and I grew up in a pretty great household, and I think I had definitely had to have blinders on for some of that, but, like, I didn't know curse words until 6th grade. I didn't know how babies were made until 7th grade, or no, 6th grade, and then my mom tried to have the conversation in 7th grade, and I was like, "That's okay.
I
This
got
kid took care of it on the bus. He told me all about it. It's fine." Um, so, like, being, preemptive about talking about relationships. So, my daughter's 10, and the other day she asked me what rape was, because I had been watching the news, and usually I'll put a headphone in if I know it's gonna go somewhere, but it was like the Secretary of Defense or something, and so she started listing off these things this guy was charged with, and I didn't see that coming, and so she was like, "What's that?" Um, and so again, I probably explained it just a smidgen above, but I didn't go full into, like, I haven't had the full-on intercourse talk with her yet.
yeah,
So at the end, I said, "Did that fully make sense?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Okay, what parts of it made sense?" And she was able to repeat back the part of it that I felt like was important for her to know. And I was like, "Great. The rest of it you'll find out later," because
right.
I want her to
It'll
be
come.
innocent, but I want her to be prepared. I want
Yeah,
her to, when she hears certain stuff and then has questions, to come to me, but I don't want to steal that from her unnecessarily. Um,
right.
so I think talking about relationships and sex as it gets closer to, and then however that aligns with your family, and and this goes along with it, I guess, but talking about how to disagree
Mm,
with other people. Um, So, like, for our family and what just happened is, Halloween. So we don't celebrate Halloween, but we will participate in trick or treating, and I have a trunk or treat that we do at my church. So we'll dress up. Um, uh, like how we approach cultural things, like Nora and Jackson just started reading Harry Potter. They've been talking about it all day with or all afternoon with Camden. They've been making up stuff like, what if Harry met Santa Claus? And I know where I stand on these issues so that I can help guide them in understanding why I'm going to say no to certain things, why I'm going to say yes, and how it's okay that other families are going to say no and yes to different things. And even if it's something we feel really strongly about, like I feel really strongly about Jesus, but in my classroom and with my own kids, I will, even in a very silly extreme way, try different ways of telling somebody about something that I feel really strongly about. So if I go up to somebody and scream, you shouldn't, oh, okay, let's say I disagree with snickerdoodle cookies. So if I love snickerdoodle cookies, if I did disagree with them, I would be healthier. But if I did disagree with snickerdoodle cookies and I went up to somebody that was holding a snickerdoodle cookie and I screamed, "You should not have that. Put it down right now. Walk away. Flee from that." Then how are they going to want to react to me? Like, now if I feel
he's
strongly that,
crazy, and I'm gonna eat my cookie.
yeah,
She
you're gonna
just
walk
wants my
away.
cookie.
You're gonna call 911, maybe have me committed. Like, there's a problem. You're not gonna want to come back. You're not gonna want to talk with me. Um, so if you really feel like it's something strong enough that you want somebody to listen to what you have to say, how should you approach them about the snickerdoodle cookie? Like even if so somebody spiked the snickerdoodle cookie and it has legit poison in it, and you're concerned about their actual physical safety. Like, what are the ways that you're going to approach them to, now that one you'd probably, well, now I'm getting down a rabbit hole, because then you probably just take the cookie and throw it away so they don't have an option. But I was like, if you're actually
Stomp
trying
it.
to, yeah, but if you're actually trying to like compel somebody or get them to just understand you, because I don't want my kids to be, and even this is just some, as a Christ follower, just the stereotype of, if you don't live the exact same way I do, and that can be a range of different things. I mean, it can be from
Right.
dressing nice on Sunday to not dressing nice on Sunday. I've had people comment on both should be the rule.
Yes.
And so we talk about how, like, what is the real thing that should be happening in whatever situation? And can they accomplish this by making a different decision? How somebody else puts yard ornaments out in October, um, doesn't directly affect us. And if it starts to, or we have a conversation, we really care about that, then we need to have a relationship first, and then we can move from there. But, and then learning how to agree to disagree, or just because it's not on us to make everybody live the same way that we do. So
Yes.
I think both of those conversations are, you need to have with your kids.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, that is it for today's episode. At CPA Moms, we believe that you can have a successful career and raise a happy family. If you are ready to embrace work-life harmony and connect with like-hearted women, join our Facebook group. Just click the link in the show notes or search CPA Moms on Facebook. We can't wait to welcome you. Until next time, thank you for being here. We see you, we believe in you, and we can't wait to grow with you.